My name is Ella Rose and I'm a visual artist. I work in film installations. I'm a musician, I've been a session singer for a long time, and I'm also a creative director for the Global Poverty Project here in New Zealand, and I'm also a mother to my beautiful 9-year-old daughter. So I've been a professional session singer for a long time. I've been singing adverts and soundtracks, movies, people's albums like Mike Oldfield, and teaching voice as well to people like Angelina Jolie, and having a very interesting career from behind the scenes. But I've also been a prolific songwriter through that whole period, and I never actually had the courage really to put my own music out, and I was very busy doing many other things. So finally I got my act together and I recorded an amazing album last year, actually a year and a half ago, with some amazing New Zealand musicians, and released it just in December. Actually finally released it, and yeah, that's out now. So it's called The Road Not Taken, and it's all about the sort of concept that sometimes you meet your destiny on the road you took to avoid it. And I love that idea that, you know, that you run away from things but you end up coming back to them whether you want to or not, and you can't run from yourself. So that's what the album's really all about. You know, I've worked in the humanitarian area as well a lot in the last 20 years or so, and I've also I'm a film installation artist as well. So I've been doing lots of things, and I'm a mother, so I have a lot of things I'm doing. But the music is so pure and raw, it's very hard to have the confidence to go forward, especially, you know, I guess I was always very aware of all the other things I could and should be doing for my humanitarian work, so I've kind of tried to juggle everything. And luckily, in the last year or so, I'm getting narrative coherence and everything's coming together, and all the work I'm doing, and I'm managing to do it all, which is great, but it took a long time. One of the projects I'm working on in this coming year is about what it means to be an empowered woman, and whether a woman can be empowered without having to take their clothes off and gyrate, as in the music business, but in other creative arts like acting, for example. I'm always amazed at the actresses who I consider to be quite serious actresses, but off come the clothes, and you never see a man on the front of Vanity Fair in his underpants. So I have a strong feminist viewpoint, and this film is going to take in a lot of issues about gender equality, about the Pacific, because I'm going to be travelling out to the Pacific a lot this year for my work with the Global Poverty Project, and looking at how to be an empowered woman and inspire other women and girl children, because my daughter's 9, to actually know what it means to be strong without having to objectify yourself. The output of my research this year will be a film, which will probably be, my usual length is a feature-length film, and it's in the style of sort of philosophical film essay. And I show it in installations on multiple screens simultaneously. I use photography and film and interview processes to actually get the message across. I first began using film as a medium when I studied fine art in London. I did my master's degree at St Martin's School of Fine Art there, and I started out actually doing sculpture and painting, and quickly moved over to film and photography, because I was actually there to try and find a way to creatively represent what I'd experienced when I had travelled and worked in war zones. And I was very, very disturbed by everything I experienced. And I was trying to find a way to communicate that, and also to communicate that cognitive dissonance that I had from having worked in a war zone and seeing the reality of what war is like, and then coming back to my cushy, safe, beautiful life in London. And so I found that film and photography was a natural medium for me, and I like to be able to use multiple screens, multiple sound sources, and to actually use text on walls and create things in this space. I find it very sort of stimulating and a great communicative tool. So I had an unusual introduction to war. My sister started working very young as a TV producer in Africa, and she went to Rwanda and filmed the atrocities there, and Somalia, and introduced me to my then boyfriend, who was a war photographer. First of all, I learned to drive in Sarajevo in an armoured car. That was pretty traumatic and interesting. I also started working for different humanitarian organisations like War Child or Children in Crisis, different charities, and actually drove aid out to Bosnia during the war, and worked on worked on airlifts of food and supplies, and worked with refugees, and basically got my finger into every pie I could, creatively and also in a practical way. And I never was the same. I could never go back to my normal life after that. In fact, I've never been able to forget just how real war is and also how real the world is. Because often when you live in this beautiful, sanitized world we live in the developed world, you forget that if you want to go back in time, go to the developing world and you've gone back in time, all in the same world, in the same time period. Going to a war zone so young totally transformed my consciousness from being a very sort of quite a spoilt, sort of self-involved artist and creative person to really recognizing how important it was to actually engage and commit to all the issues going on in the world. In fact, I've never been able to forget it. I did an art installation called Between Love and Dreaming, which was all about the meaning of love, sex, relationships, pornography, objectification of women, the way we relate to each other, and most of all, the way Hollywood and the media represents love and that gender relationship and actually programs you to expect impossible things and doesn't program you for how to reconcile, how to forgive, how to have universal love. It's all about romantic love, and it's a very small, constrained little box, which is really the movie always ends when they get married, when in fact that's when your life may start if you do get married, or if you commit to a partner. So it was all about that whole sort of broad schema and all those sort of memes and thoughts, and yeah, it was an interesting installation, and part of that was I asked members of the public to contribute by writing love letters that they wished they'd written. And I really didn't expect Kiwis to respond, because I think of them as quite emotionally sort of, how shall I say, a little withdrawn emotionally. But I got over 600 letters that people wished they'd written to people they loved. It was heartbreaking, it was terrible. It was people who said, dear so-and-so, I've loved you for 15 years, I see you every day in the office, I never say anything, or people who'd loved their best friends, or people who'd had affairs, but I mean, it was absolutely right across the whole sort of possibilities. So that kind of installation is what I do, and I like to involve the public as much as possible, as well as just give them things that I'm working on.